Hello, and welcome to the Badhumanist look at Vengeance Demon Hunter. So in this video, I'll be taking a look at how Vengeance is currently playing on the BfA beta. I will be going through the passives and abilities that the Vengeance Demon Hunter has here on the beta. I'll then go through the list of talents, talking about a number of different possible builds that Vengeance might end up in, talking about the talents, what they do, where their value might come from, synergies, things like that. I'll follow it up with a little mini rotation where I kind of show what Vengeance survivability might look like, for instance, and what kind of ability you'll be using when. Afterwards, I'll talk about overall stats as well as stat synergy. I'll not be talking about what stats best or worst per se, but just how the stats actually going to be interacting, where they might be getting their value from. Because remember, all stats have value. It just comes down to which are more valuable than others. And then I'll wrap up with a overall thoughts and a look for the future. So let's start off here. I have open here with passives. Our first one is Shattered Souls. So killing a target will sometimes shatter their soul, leaving a fragment behind. The fragment will be consumed when approach, healing you for a good bit of health. Now, consuming a lesser soul fragment heals you for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, with a minimum of 1% of your maximum health. Consuming a demon soul will grant you 20% increased damage for 15 seconds. Again, less demons going to be going on in this expansion than in the last, it seems. Mastery here is Fell Blood, so it increases the armor bonus of demon spikes by an additional X% of your agility. Also increases your attack power by 26.8%. I'll talk more about this mastery later. The fact that it's a percent of your agility is going to be interesting with the way that stats will be scaling, but I'll talk more about that when I focus on the stats later. Double jump is a passive, of course. You can double jump. You can also still double jump and then glide, so that's still a thing. Demonic wards, your tattoos reduce all damage taken by 10% and increase your stamina by 65% and your armor by 75%. This is the basic kind of tanking passive, what makes you a tank. Chaos Brand, your fire damage brands the target to increase magic damage taken by 5%. Talking about abilities, now we have Torment. This is your taunt, 8-second cooldown. Again, you taunt the target for 3 seconds. It should be quickly noted, again, I know there's a lot of talk going on right now about reduced threat for tanks. Yes, the multiplier for tanks for threat has been reduced down to about 4x. With artifacts and such, it was, again, a good bit higher, some of the 15. I think some people were saying that some specs had 20x multipliers on some abilities. But it's down to 4. That's not going to be a big problem in general for single target. Tanks are still doing enough damage that a 4x multiplier is going to make them well above any single target damage for any DPS class. AoEs where it might be an issue, and it's not going to be a huge issue. Again, if a DPS is dumb and targets a ad that you're not focusing and you're not getting out consistent AoE damage, they might pull threat, but it's not going to be a horrible thing. But again, I do think that threat is going to be something that you can't just kind of passively ignore, and we'll have to see how that scales with gear as well. So again, if tanks damage doesn't scale as quickly as DPS damage, it might become more of an issue later on in the expansion, but we'll have to wait and see. So Torment is your taunt. Again, this is something that increases the multiplier of threat for that 3 seconds. Throw Glaive. So again, you throw a glaive at the target, dealing a bunch of physical damage. The glaive can ricochet to additional targets. It generates high threat. So this is a very good ability for picking up threat on multiple targets. So again, it's at range too, so you can kind of like throw it while you're running in. It can generate a bunch of threat. Maybe throw it and then go ahead and jump on them with Infernal Strike, which I'll talk about in a second. Spectral Sight allows you to see enemies and treasure through physical barriers. Now, this currently actually bugs out my graphics on the beta, so I will not be showing you this. But yes, it does do what it says it does. So Cleave, now again, so you strike all enemies in front of you for physical damage, and then heal yourself for a certain amount. It consumes up to 2 soul fragments within 25 yards. So again, when it consumes those soul fragments, you get the healing that was mentioned previously. That's a talent. Sigil of Silence, 1 minute cooldown. You place a Sigil of Silence at your location that activates, silence all enemies affected by the sigil for 8 seconds. Again, you can technically place this elsewhere. I currently have a talent that makes it always happen at my feet, but normally you can place this with a reticle. But again, you'll see it right now at my feet. Takes a couple seconds and then boom, goes off. Sigil of Misery. Place the Sigil of Misery at your location. After 2 seconds, it causes all enemies affected by the sigil to cower in fear. Targets are disoriented. So again, if I go up to targets and actually use this, you will see this. Right, you can kind of see that they're cowering in fear. Sigil of Flame, same idea. This one just deals fire damage and then additional damage over 8 seconds to all enemies affected by the sigil. Metamorphosis is again a big cooldown, 3-minute cooldown. It transforms you into a demon form. It increases your current and maximum health by 30% and the armor by 100%. So again, it basically doubles your armor for physical damage and then your maximum health pool. Still doesn't give great survivability against magic damage, but again, the maximum health is like the only benefit there, of course, right? So the increased effective health pool you're going to have will help you against magic there, but again, the armor is just going to help you against physical damage. Infernal Strike. So again, this is a leap. Boom. Does damage when you land. Imprison. Again, imprisons a demon, beast, or humanoid for a minute. Immolation Aura. Again, this is engulfs in flames, causing a bunch of damage to enemies within 8 yards, and then radiating fire damage. It does generate pain over 6 seconds. So again, you can kind of see that, and then it emulates outside of you. There we go. Glide, I already showed off that. That's a talent. Fiery Brand. In fact, let me actually change that talent. Cool. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So what that did is give me back Shear, which again shears the enemy for physical damage and shatters a lesser soul fragment from the target. This would be the normal way. You will be generating those soul fragments. Again, it also generates 10 pain. So that's the kind of idea there. Again, I had talented into an ability that got rid of that, which I'll talk about later. Fiery Brand, 1 minute cooldown, brand an enemy with a demonic symbol, instantly dealing fire damage and reducing the damage they deal to you by 40% for 8 seconds. Now this can work, of course, against if they are a magic damage dealer. But again, it just reduces all damage by 40%. And again, it's on a target, which is important. So again, it's not on you, it's on a target. So you're reducing the target's damage to you. This is a talent, that's a talent. Disrupt, interrupt, again, it does generate 30 pain if you successfully interrupt. Demon Spikes is your main active mitigation, so you surge with fell power, increasing your armor by 1811 and your parry chance 50%. Now, it should be noted that if I look at my character screen and my current armor, there we go. My armor currently is 620, which ends up giving me a physical damage reduction of 30.35%. If I use Demon Spikes, you'll see my armor goes up, and now it basically over doubles, right? So again, it's now 63.08 as opposed to, again, that 30.35. It's a 16-second recharge, only lasts for 6 seconds. So the amount of time you have without this up, I think is, I'll talk about this later, but might be one of the gaps in the Vengeance Demon Hunter's ability. Consume magic, again, you consume a beneficial magical effect from the target, removing it and granting you 20 pain. So again, that can be very valuable as well. Okay. Now let's look at talents here. So the first row of talents, we have Abyssal Strike. Infernal Strike's range is increased by 10 yards and its cooldown is reduced by 8 seconds. So again, this basically just allows you to use this more frequently. Agonizing Flames, Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and deals 20% increased damage. So again, just an increase to movement speed and damage. Razor Spikes, so while Demon Spikes is active, you deal increased physical damage and your melee attacks snare the target. So again, more of a utility plus a damage. I will say that I think it's quite odd that none of these directly affect your survivability. Now, there is a talent that gives you Leech, in which, of course, doing more damage will lead to more healing. But them on their own, without any Leech, they're not really there for survivability in a direct sense. Again, it's just you doing more damage, and there's no direct damage correlation to healing. So again, the passive or artifact trait of fire damage equaling healing isn't here anymore. So again, there isn't that direct sense of, oh, if you're doing more fire damage, you're getting some healing from that. There's not that at all baseline anymore. So again, this is just basically a DPS slash utility row here, which I think is a bit odd. 100 row, we have Feast of Souls. So Soul Cleave heals you for an additional amount over 6 seconds. So when you Soul Cleave, not only do you heal yourself the original amount, but you also get an additional amount over 6 seconds. That amount does change with your stats. Fallout. Immolation Aura's initial burst has a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments from the enemies. So again, the initial burst that you get on Immolation Aura will generate more soul fragments so you can heal yourself with them, of course. Burning Alive. So every 2 seconds, your fiery brand deals fire damage and spreads. Here's the value of this. What this basically means is Firebrand normally has 8 seconds, so you're going to get 4 basically ticks, if you will, of Burning Alive every 2 seconds. You get 4 kind of ticks of this, and so it will spread. So what this means is if you have a giant pack of enemies and you fire your brand, it will eventually spread to all those enemies, which is very valuable because again, Firebrand only reduces the damage they deal to you. So this again is very valuable in an AoE situation. Again, Fallout can be very useful as well, and so can Soul Cleave. Now again, the Soul Cleave doesn't scale with targets. It's just having a Soul Cleave. Fallout again does give you more because again, any enemy it hits, it increases the chances that you get fragments from them. So again, there is a little bit of scaling with targets with that, and there's of course direct scaling with target for Burning Alive. Single target tanking, you're going to want to pick one of these two. Again, Fallout or Feast of Souls. I just found Feast of Souls on a tanking dummy where I had no healer to be slightly better, but again, with the healer, it is possible that having the greater amount of soul fragments could be a more valuable one. AoE, this of course can definitely compete. 102, you have Fellblade. So again, charge to your target, deal damage, it does generate 30 pain, and Shear has a chance to reset the cooldown. It's a 12-second cooldown reduced by haste. So again, this can definitely be moved for movement, again charging from target to target, and again it does generate pain. Charred Flesh. Firebrand increases the fire damage your abilities deal to the target by 20%. So again, this is just increasing again your damage to targets. Generating pain here is at least nice to help somewhat survivability wise. This is just straight damage basically. Again, unless you take a leech talent. Infernal Strike creates a sigil of flame when you land. So again, just kind of a utility thing, help with threat for sure. But again, no survivability really here with anything other than Fellblade. Again, and the only survivability is really through the generation of pain that can then be used on something like Soul Cleave. 104, Soul Rending. Leech increased by 5% and gain an additional 20% leech when Metamorphosis is active. So again, this would make all of these damaging talents somewhat survivability in terms of healing. So again, increasing your leech by 5% would definitely make other talents more valuable in terms of the damage that you're doing. Feed the Demon. Consuming a soul fragment reduces the remaining cooldown of demon spikes by half a second. So again, that helps increase the uptime of demon spikes. I'll actually show you a rotation with that, and then probably another one with Fracture. So Fracture replaces Shear. So instead of having an ability that can just be used whenever, basically just on the GCD, use whenever you want, generate 10 pain, this one generates 25 pain. It, however, is a ability that's reduced by haste on a recharge, and it always shatters 2 lesser soul fragments. So not only does this ability here do basically the damage you would get, more damage I should say, sorry, than you would get out of 2 shears, but you also generate 2 lesser soul fragments from them, and there's also 2 charges. So again, I actually found Fracture to be very, very good in terms of generating soul fragments and generating pain. So I actually did find this talent to be really, really good. Feed the Demons, of course, is going to be competitive because, again, it's going to increase the uptime of demon spikes. Soul Rending, I think, needs a bit of a buff. I think that 5% is just not enough. The 25% Wall Metamorphosis is definitely very good. The 5% baseline, I think, isn't enough. Again, I'll talk about this more when I give my end thoughts here, but the overall survivability of Vengeance is not bad, and I'll talk about that once I get the rotation and compare it to the Blood Death Knight that I've already done. But I just found it surprising there was not a lot of talents that directly helped your survivability without taking something like a soul rending. So I almost think they need like a passive leech, or again bring back that passive leech from fire damage. I will say, and I'll repeat that later, that that could be very valuable to help this spec out. 106, concentrated sigils. This is the talent that I took that I showed you before. All of them are now basically at your location. The more important part than that is that the duration effect is increased by 2 seconds. The reason being that you can just make a macro to do the at your feet part. You can do the, I believe it's at player, I believe. So if you do the at player modifier on a macro, it will always put it at your feet. And so you can already get that part in a macro. So the 2 second really matters here. Sigil of Change. This basically is like it's kind of like a grip in a sense. So again, all enemies affected by the sigil are pulled to its center and are snared, reducing movement speed. The nice thing about this, as opposed to something like Gorfine's Grasp from the Death Knight, is that you can choose where to place this. So if you take this talent, right, like so, I can choose where they're pulled to. So again, with grabs, you're basically always going to be pulling them in towards a single thing. Here, you're kind of like, okay, I want them to go there or whatever, right? And then it goes off to its thing and will pull those targets in. Quicken sigils. All sigils activate 1 second faster, and their cooldowns are reduced by 20%. So again, this not only allows them to activate quicker, but again, have higher uptimes, so you can use them more frequently. So again, you can honestly pick the one that you find to be best for you. I know a lot of people do like the Sigil of Chains for that kind of grip ability. Quicken's also, of course, valuable as well. Again, it really is a case of just pick your poison here. 108, Gluttony. So consuming a soul fragment has a chance to activate Metamorphosis for 5 seconds. This talent is amazing and crappy all at the same time. I did multiple attempts, died multiple times to the target dummy here, and I had times where this procced a bunch, and it was great, and I survived for a very long time. I had times when it didn't proc at all, and it hurt. As someone who plays a healer as a main, I already despise randomness when it comes to survivability. Right? I don't want a heal, or I don't want a tanking ability that's on random. I want to be more survivable when I want it. Right? I like control over those abilities. So anything that's random like this or a chance, I'm always going to find to be rough. I know over the average, I think it actually is a very good talent. I will say that on average, I think it has a lot of value. I personally don't like it. I don't like to go through and say, crap, I could have survived if this thing would have procced. I would much rather take a talent like the one of the remaining two that I can then use when I want it, and again, really I think helps with the higher skill you have. Speaking of that, we have Fell Devastation. So it's a 20-yard range, channeled ability, 1 minute cooldown. It does a bunch of damage directly in front of you for a bunch of fire damage, and causing damage also heals up to. So this to me seems a lot like the Blood Death Knight ability that is escaping me right now. It'll come to me later. But basically the idea here is you're doing a bunch of damage in front of you while channeling, and then also again causing you to heal during that period of time as well. So again, very valuable there. Spirit Bomb is a 30 pain ability. Consumes up to 5 soul fragments within 25 yards, and then explode, afflicting nearby enemies with frailty for 20 seconds, damaging them per fragment. You heal for 10% of all damage you deal to enemies with that debuff. So the nice thing about this is, even if you only have 1 soul, lesser soul fragment available for you, you can use this ability in AoE situations, and you'll get that 10% of all damage you deal to enemies with that debuff. Again, you only need 1 to get the debuff, and having more doesn't actually, again, increase the debuff. You don't get 20% if you absorb 2. So it's always a 10% flat. So this is very valuable in AoE situations. Should be noted, Fell Devastation does AoE damage as well. But this again can be very valuable for that. Does good damage that does scale with fragments. And again, it allows you to get damage from, or get healing from the damage you do to those targets. So again, the more targets you have, the more damage you'll be doing in AoE situations. So you get some decent healing out of Spirit Bomb. It does cost 30 pain, so it would be competing with Soul Cleave. But again, I think it would be competitive with Soul Cleave in AoE. Single target, however, Soul Cleave is a stronger survivability talent than Spirit Bomb is. So again, Fell Devastation is what I went with. for single target survivability. 110, Last Resort. Why this is so much worse than Purgatory for Blood, I'm not quite sure. So again, when you sustain fatal damage, instead it transforms you into Metamorphosis and returns you to 30% health. So you gain all the benefits of Metamorphosis. So again, you get the increased health pool and armor, and again, it resets you at the 30% health, but it can only occur once every 8 minutes. Purgatory does a very similar thing. Again, you have to, of course, be healed to not die. This automatically saves you, but it's every 4 minutes, and I just can't imagine that the fact that you need to heal yourself, which is not a problem for Blood, makes it half as useful. So that's an odd balance across tanks things that I think I would hope they would address. Void Reaver, so enemies struck by Soul Cleave deal 6% less damage to you for 12 seconds. This has great value in AoE. Again, in AoE situations, to Soul Cleave a bunch of targets and they all deal less damage to you, that of course multiplies very quickly and can be very good at keeping yourself alive in Mythic Plus, those types of situations. The one that I, however, loved for single target was Soul Barrier. Shield yourself for 12 seconds, absorbing a bunch of damage, consumes all soul fragments within 25 yards, and adds X amount to the shield per fragment. So again, if you absorb in 5 fragments, for example, you basically double up your shield. You have a 20,000 shield, and again, I only have 46,000 health at 110. This, of course, will scale with level and with your health pool. So again, I found this to be a 30-second cooldown. That was exactly what Demon Hunter needed to kind of give them that active damage as an absorb. It's good against magic damage, good against physical damage, so it allows you to shield yourself, and then that gives you time to heal with something like, again, a normal Soul Cleave, or with something like, where's the other ability? Oh yeah, Fell Devastation. So yeah, I definitely liked this ability. So yeah, so this is the kind of the basic build I would go. Razor Spikes versus Agonizing Flames is one that doesn't really matter, like I said, for survivability purposes. It really is whatever you want. So again, this is like a pick your own poison kind of thing here. I, however, liked the movement speed a bit, so I'll go with this here. Also, this again, I find to be maybe a bit more useful, again, for the AoE threat. Increased physical damage is okay. The snaring effect is fine. But again, Demon Spikes has relatively low uptime, so I'm not quite sure the overall value of this. The Missile Strike can be definitely good in AoE situations where you're kind of jumping around a lot. But again, I think that for my uses, I think that Agonizing Flames was what I valued for just as again this target dummy type approach here. Alright, so again, I'm going to show you this kind of build. I'm also going to switch it up and kind of change another way to kind of show you some other possibilities here of hopefully what I've been trying to talk about. Alright, so we'll go with that just to make this easy as well. Alright. Okay. Alright, let's go to you. Okay. So again, I'm going to try to keep my active up as long as possible. Again, got that shield off. Now again, it's important to not consume those soul fragments in cases where, again, you don't need the heal, obviously. That way you don't kind of waste them in a sense. Again, with the target dummy, you're basically trying to go around the Uber Strike. Let's go into meta. When I get out of meta, I can Fiery Brand. There we go. And I got my shield up again. Now again, because I know I have the shield, I'm going to intentionally kind of get some. There we go. Big shield there. Again, not going to be absorbing any while I have that shield and at full health. Again, always trying to keep my Demon Spikes up as often as possible. There we go. Get good damage. Get them healing off. And so yeah, this is the basic idea. I do think that it feels very good. It's some Fell Devastation to heal back up. Again, this dummy just basically ramps up in damage as time goes on, trying to get as many fragments as I can for the shield. And yeah, so I'm going to try to go as long as I can without dying. Eventually, again, the damage just ramps up to the point to where you don't have really have a choice. Again, I'm doing actually quite well this time, I will say. The damage basically going to keep ramping up with the Uber Strike. I got Fiery Brand backed off cooldown, so let's use that. Help take less damage. I'm going to get a shield here. Let's heal. So again, this is actually really good survivability. I was worried that I might suck while recording. But yeah, so again, this is, again, you can see you have a pretty good number of abilities to kind of keep yourself alive. There's that lovely heal. Let's get that going again. If I can survive to the next shield, that would be nice. And again, you can use that shield time to really kind of help yourself heal back up in that window. Now, I met it relatively late, so if I met it earlier, I might be able to kind of reach that again. But looks like I will just not make it to, there we go. Let's see what we did there. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's about what the best I was able to do before. So 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Again, for comparison, the Blood Death Knight, again, was the only tank that I've tested out so far, was right around the same time, about 240. I will say that I think that on Blood, I could go for a little bit longer. I thought in Blood, I could probably make it to about 3 minutes. And maybe go beyond that because of the way the cooldowns would cycle back through. You do have just, I think, a bit more tools with Blood Death Knight as you do with Vengeance, but I will say that with this build, and again, the actual build we go with might be different because, again, this is a very niche case. I have no healer. Again, I'm on a target dummy, so again, it's not at all a all-encompassing look at the tank here, but it is the only way to reliably be able to compare across the tank. So again, I'm basically looking at, cell survivability, how well can they keep themselves alive without any external healing. And again, in that regard, Vengeance and Blood felt pretty close. Now, I will say that I didn't really think I could push this much further. Again, I might have been able to push it a bit further to get another Fiery Brand and maybe last a little bit longer. But again, I did notice that it's actually really good. That damage-wise, very similar. I was able to do about 1.3. I could get 1.3. I did forget to use Fell Devastation earlier in the rotation, so I probably could have done 1.3 with that. Healing, again, very similar to what Blood was as well. So again, you can see that they're both the kind of tanks where they're going to live through their own healing. Again, if you look at the healing, by the way, here, Consume Soul, again, is what you get from the Soul Cleave, filling that back in. But next on that list, Soul Barrier, right? So again, my biggest shield, again, was about 6,000. I actually got a 10,000 shield once while practicing. My average shield, again, was about 3,000. Consume Soul, again, very good healing from that. This is the base heal from Soul Cleave. Piece of Souls, again, is that tick afterwards, and then Fell Devastation, again. I could have gotten off another one as well in this, which would have probably helped. But yeah. So that is Venged Demon Hunter in that kind of build. Now, like I mentioned, the other possible way you could possibly go is in that Feed the Demons route. The idea there being increased uptime on Demon Spikes instead of using Fracture, of course. I would definitely always go with Soul Barrier. I just found that Last Resort was not as good as Soul Barrier was. Again, it's always nice to be able to not die, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Again, Soul Barrier, I think, in general, is just so powerful, and it's so what I think Vengeance needs in that be able to keep yourself alive. With a healer, maybe this is better because you don't need this as much, and you're just trying to not die, randomly to something, and that would, of course, keep you alive if you would normally have died from, like, a one-shot or something like that. So let's go with that. Let's go with Gluttony to kind of see, again, how this might be able to help. And let's keep it at that. Okay. So I'm going to keep everything else the same. Again, let's actually just show you Fallout as well. So I'll switch to Fallout as well. But I'll keep everything else the same. So this I don't have anymore. Okay. So for this, let's do this. Let's fire random pull. Okay. Alright, so again, for every one that I pull in, I'm going to reduce that cooldown on Demon Spikes. So again, the fact that you have multiple charge of Demon Spikes, I think, really does help with this ability, because again, now you're able to kind of like pull in and not worry about capping in a sense, right? Because you have multiple charges. If you reduce one past a charge, you just keep reducing on the other one. That's meta now. So again, the same basic idea here is going on. Generating the souls, pulling them in after taking damage, of course. I'm going to kind of build up some shards from my shield coming up. There we go. Boom. Huge healing from all those fragments. Plus, again, now I get the nice shield. Heal myself back up to full. There we go. I have Fiery Brands coming back off. I'll be using that. Very nice. So yeah, with this again, when I immolate, I do gain the shards. So again, you can see how I have a bit more shards there. I'm going to again try to get up to a good number of shards for the shield. Get a bunch of healing from that, as you can see. Keep that going. Now again, I don't get the heal off the end of it. Again, I have to kind of pull in to get the healing. It is important to kind of be timing that ability with damage, because again, it does do more healing based upon how much damage you took in the last time. I should note that Demon Spikes is kind of off the GCD, so you can kind of be using it while doing other things, and yeah, didn't quite make it there. So again, didn't last nearly as long, about a minute 41 seconds, so almost a minute less. It could have been my play. I will definitely not be surprised if that was the case, but yes, you can kind of see how some of those work. Now, what I found is when I got lucky, right, again, we'll take a look at it here actually when I get back down there, but when I got lucky and got a good number of procs from Gluttony, that was very helpful, because Gluttony again naturally gives you that leech from Metamorphosis, as well as increased health pool and armor, and you can use that to kind of get yourself back up to full when you're by yourself, right? You can kind of use that time, kind of like how I was using the Soul Barrier window, to kind of get yourself back up to full and then get ready to take those next hits. So you really are dependent on that. So let's take a look here. Again, I also used meta once, and meta normally has a 15-second duration, so we can see with the total duration from my auras here. So none. In that entire time, I did not get a single proc of Gluttony, and hence the problem that I have with Gluttony. So that maybe was a good way of showing it. So again, consuming soul fragments. Let's see if I can figure out how many souls. So it looks like I consumed 46 souls. Okay, so out of the 46 souls, I got 0 procs. Yeah. So you can see my frustration with this talent. I once, in a very similar type style, got something like I think 5 procs in a similar amount of time. Maybe it takes a little bit longer, but about 5 procs. And that was great. I was able to live again about 2 minutes 40 seconds. I could live the same amount of time that I did what I showed you previously. But it's based on luck, and I hate having to be lucky, because I generally am not lucky. So again, does this talent have value? Sure, I'm sure it does. This is a talent that, again, I will say as well, is one that over the long run could be better than either of these two for a single target, right? It absolutely could. And again, when you have a healer and stuff, maybe again it ends up being better. I just don't like the randomness of it, so that's why I would, if I was tanking with this class, stay away from it. Even if again Feldestation was mathematically worse on average, I care about the worst case scenario, right? I don't want to die ever, so I don't care about the average situation. I care about the worst case. And worst case, I think Feldestation is going to be better, worst case, than Gluttony. Okay, so let's talk a bit about stats. So, Crit Strike, of course, does increase parry. Now, parry and dodge have very equal kind of value. Again, parry technically does increase your swing timer, but we're not too worried about that. So again, crit helps damage, helps you with parry. Again, parry having avoidance I think is going to be very valuable in this expansion. I think with the lower health pools, we'll see that avoidance kind of maybe gain some value in terms of it compared to effective health type things like armor or stamina or versatility. So again, I think those will be valuable. Versatility, of course, will be very strong. Not only does it increase the healing done, but it does increase the damage reduction. So versatility will definitely be very valuable. Mastery. So here's the thing that I think is interesting about Mastery. The bonus damage of Demon Spikes is very strong. doubling your armor effectively, right? Reducing the damage by another 30% of physical damage is very, very valuable. And that amount will increase based on your agility. So the better your gear is, the bigger percent of the armor that will be, right? So again, when you hit max level and you start scaling from there with gear, agility is going to be scaling more than any other stat, right? In BfA, your main stat will be scaling faster than your secondary stats, which was not the case in Legion. So you will be getting a lot of agility, which again will translate to some dodge, of course. But that's, I think, going to increase mastery value. So it might be a case where, and I could be wrong, but it could be the case where in Tier 1, mastery value is what it is, but mastery value goes up as the expansion goes on. Because again, the increased armor is going to be a percentage of your agility. The agility is going to be going up, and the more mastery you have increases the percent of your agility. I think, again, I wouldn't be surprised if its value at the beginning of the expansion is lower than its value at the end of the expansion. Of course, if they change it altogether, that doesn't count. Increasing attack power, of course, is very valuable for increasing your damage. Again, threat will be a thing. Again, 1.1 this time, 1.3 last time. Again, I think that threat will not be too much of an issue. Haste. Now, haste definitely has some value here. Haste, of course, reduces the recharge on demon spikes, so it increases your uptime of demon spikes. It reduces the cooldown of immolation aura, so again you get more pain, and again you can do more threat with that. Again, with the talent that I took, you also get more soul shards with that as well. Again, if you took the talent that I do prefer in Fracture, haste helps that as well. So you can see that haste definitely has a lot of value in pure survivability. So again, the more haste you have, the more soul shards you're going to be able to generate, the more healing you'll be able to do, which is again going to be quite good. So I do think I would not be surprised if haste verse end up being at the beginning very strong with mastery in there as well. And again, crit being great for DPS but not as great for survivability. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if mastery kind of gained in value as the expansion went on and as we got more and more agility. Alright, so overall thoughts. Again, I think Vengeance is actually very strong. I'm quite pleased, in my opinion, to see this. Vengeance, of course, was one of the worst tanks for rating at the high end in Legion. It was definitely possible, but you were definitely putting your group at a disadvantage, no question about it. And I definitely think they've done a lot to help increase that baseline. However, I will say I just feel that there's something missing. For a class that has so much struggled for survivability, to have so many talents that don't directly affect survivability is a bit odd. I feel as if, like when I was reading the talents, I was like, am I missing something? Am I missing that there is some kind of built-in leech or something? And I really thought there was, but again, I read through, like I said, all the passives, all the abilities. There's no built-in leech ability other than soul rending. But again, that 5% leech just isn't enough to do enough healing. That would need to be 15, 20, 25% for it to actually have an effect. I do think that they should bring back in as a passive what was the artifact trait that allowed you to do healing based off your fire damage. So again, if you go in and that way you could kind of get some healing off of your immolation, you could get some healing off of your different, like Fell Blades, and again, different abilities there. I do think that that would help for sure. Again, it would make something like Charred Flesh valuable, because again, now you're increasing your fire damage in a window, which also helps your healing out. Again, it would allow things like Infernal Strike doing fire damage to be, again, have some value from a healing perspective. Again, it would, of course, make Agonizing Flames actually a survivability in some way, shape, or form by increasing the fire damage. So I just really think that that one simple change, a simple passive of some percent of your fire damage converts into healing, and scale that out would make this class like right where it needs to be. I would also say that, again, I don't mind the gaps of Demon Spikes, but it is frustrating, and I think it might lead some people to kind of overstack haste to get that closer together. Again, taking something like Feed the Demons definitely helps. Again, we can actually take a look at that real quick. If you look at my uptime on Demon Spikes, 53%. So again, its base is 6 out of, in this case, 16 seconds, which would be 3/8, so 37.5%. And again, that talent definitely helped increase the uptime to above 50%. That's not bad at all. So again, I don't mind the gap in demon spikes basically, but again, if they could just add in some kind of passive healing from some kind of fire damage, and or again bake in some kind of, again, right now you're only getting leech in meta with this talent again. Uh, yeah, I just wish that they would do something to kind of fill in the gaps, if you will, for this class. So what do you think? Do you think that Vengeance Demon Hunter might actually make a comeback? You hope that they will not be the bottom rung tank this time around, or do you think they're still going to be left there in the bottom? They definitely have good mobility, definitely have good utility. The question is going to come down to can they survive? And again, from my very specialized testing that I've been doing here on the beta, at least compared to Blood Death Knight, which the rumor is a very good tank, they are competing on that playing field, again, if not just slightly behind. So let me know what you think down there in the comments. If you like this video, give me a like. If you dislike the video, give me a dislike. If you want to see more content like this, please go ahead and subscribe. Coming up next will be a like and dislike for each of these two Demon Hunter specs, followed by the Warrior class going up next. So the 3 Warrior specs will be coming up shortly on the channel. So again, if you're looking forward to things like that, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much for listening if you made it all the way through, and I hope to see you in the next video.